What if I told you this simple setup could pull water out of thin air? Not from a pipe, not from a hidden tank, not from some expensive off-grid machine, just from the air itself. And the craziest part is, the core idea behind it is old, really old, the kind of forgotten engineering trick that sounds fake until you actually see water forming right in front of you. Today, I'm testing a cheap $12 setup that claims to collect water from air using one of the simplest principles in nature. If it works, this could be one of the most underrated survival ideas ever. It's cheap, passive, and built around a concept people have known for centuries, but almost nobody talks about anymore. And there are 3 reasons this is so interesting. First, because the air around you holds more water than most people realize. Second, because old desert and coastal civilizations figured out how to collect moisture long before modern systems existed. And third, because if this little setup actually works, then what looks like a gimmick might be a real emergency backup people are ignoring. So here's the question. Can a dirt cheap device really turn humidity into usable water? Because if it can, this is not just a cool experiment. This is the kind of thing people wish they knew before a heat wave, a water outage, or an off-grid emergency. Take a close look at the setup. It's simple on purpose. No giant machine, no complicated filters, no expensive parts. Just a basic surface designed to encourage condensation, a collection area underneath, and the right conditions to let nature do what it has always done. Pull moisture out of moving air, cool it down enough to condense, and guide those droplets somewhere useful. That's the promise, anyway. And I know what some people are already thinking. If getting water from air were this easy, why isn't everybody doing it? That's exactly why this is worth testing. Because there's a huge difference between a flashy idea and a practical one. A lot of viral free energy and infinite resource claims collapse the second you look closely. But this one is different because the science itself is not fantasy. Air really does hold water vapor. Condensation is real. Dew is real. Fog collection is real. The only thing we need to find out is whether this cheap, forgotten trick can collect enough water to be more than just a neat science demo. So let's talk about why this even makes sense. Every morning, nature proves this concept works. You see it on grass, car windows, metal railings, rooftops, and cold drink cans. Water appears because the surface temperature and air conditions reach the point where moisture in the air can no longer stay invisible. It condenses. That's it. No magic. Just physics. The big idea here is simple. If you can create or use a surface that encourages that condensation consistently and then direct those droplets into a container, you can harvest water that was already floating in the air around you. Not infinite in the literal sense, of course, but it feels infinite because the source is constantly being replenished by the atmosphere. And that's what makes this so addictive to watch. It feels like cheating. Now, before we test it, here's the first thing that makes people underestimate this idea. Most people think of air as empty. They think water only exists when they can see it. Rain, rivers, bottles, pipes. But the atmosphere is carrying moisture all the time. Some days more, some days less. In humid places, the amount can be surprisingly high. Even in drier regions, the right timing and the right surface can still create condensation. That's reason number 1 this old trick matters. The resource is already there. Reason number 2 is that ancient people were way smarter about passive survival than we give them credit for. Long before electric pumps, air conditioners, and atmospheric water generators, people in dry and coastal regions learned how to work with temperature swings, wind, shade, and surface design to capture moisture. They may not have called it water harvesting in modern engineering terms, but the principle was exactly the same. Don't fight nature. Use it. And reason number 3 is the one that really hooks me. Most people only care about a forgotten idea once it becomes useful again. Suddenly, when water costs rise, emergencies happen, or infrastructure fails, old tricks stop sounding primitive and start sounding brilliant. So now we test it. I've got the collection tray underneath, the condensation surface on top, and the setup placed where it can actually interact with moving air. This matters. A bad location can kill the result before you even start. Shade, nighttime cooling, airflow, humidity, and exposure all affect performance. So this is not a magic device that works the same everywhere. That's important. If this fails, I want to know whether the idea failed or the conditions did. And honestly, that's where most people go wrong with videos like this. They either oversell the result or undersell the environment. Then viewers try it once in the wrong place at the wrong time and assume the whole concept is fake. So I want to be fair here. The idea is real. The conditions decide the output. Now we wait. This is the least flashy part of the process, but it's actually the most important. Because if the droplets start forming, the whole video changes. It stops being a theory and becomes proof. And there it is. Tiny droplets starting to gather on the surface. This is the moment that makes the entire thing click. Because once you see the moisture appear, your brain immediately reframes the air around you. It no longer feels empty. It feels full of hidden resource. At first, the droplets are small, easy to miss if you don't get close, but then they begin to combine. Small beads become larger ones. Larger ones start to move, and once gravity takes over, they slide down toward the edge and collect below. That right there is the payoff. Water from air, not gallons, not enough to replace a full household water system, but real water collected passively from a source people walk through every day without thinking about. And this is where the second wave of curiosity hits, because once people see even a little water form, they stop asking, is it real? They can start asking, how much better can this get? Could a better surface collect more? Could cooler nighttime conditions improve it? Could mesh, metal, plastic, coated material, or angled panels make a major difference? Could a larger version turn a survival trick into a serious backup system? That's what makes this concept so strong for a US audience. It sits right at the intersection of DIY engineering, preparedness, money saving, and forgotten knowledge. It feels educational, practical, and slightly unbelievable all at once. Now let's be honest about the limits, because credibility matters. This is not a miracle machine that gives a family endless drinking water for $12 with zero effort. That would be nonsense. If the air is extremely dry, output will be weak. If your setup is bad, output will be weak. If you don't think about hygiene and collection safety, you shouldn't treat random condensed water like premium bottled water. And if somebody sells this as a total replacement for real infrastructure, they're overselling it. But that does not make it useless. What it makes it is situationally brilliant. In the right environment, with the right design, this kind of forgotten engineering can give you a passive way to capture moisture. Maybe it's a science experiment. Maybe it's a survival backup. Maybe it's a gateway to building a better off-grid system. But it is not fake. And that matters. Because we live in a time where people trust convenience so much, they forget how much basic engineering can still do with almost nothing. That's why this feels bigger than just a $12 hack. It reminds you that some of the smartest ideas are not the loudest ones. They're the quiet ones, the ones built on observation, the ones ancient people figured out because they had to, the ones modern people ignore because they look too simple to matter. And yet, here we are, watching water form from air on a cheap little setup that most people would scroll past without a second thought. That's what I love about this. It doesn't just give you a result. It changes the way you see the world around you. The air stops feeling empty. The old trick stops feeling old, and the line between survival, science, and engineering gets very thin. So did this $12 forgotten engineering trick create free water from air? Yes, in the sense that matters most. It proved the principle. It produced real condensed water. It showed that the atmosphere is not just surrounding you, it's storing potential. And that means the bigger opportunity is obvious. If a small, cheap setup can do this, what could a smarter, larger, optimized version do? That's the real hook, because this isn't the end of the idea. It's the beginning. And once you've seen water appear where there was supposedly nothing, it becomes very hard to stop thinking about what else the old world understood that we forgot. So now the real question is not whether this works. It's why more people aren't building it